On this episode of Marketing Mavericks, we talked to the co-founders of Game of Drones. They took an idea and a meetup group and made it into a lucrative business and vertical markets. Coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Marketing Mavericks is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace has recently launched the latest version of their platform, Squarespace 7, which has completely redesigned interface, integrations with Getty Images, and Google Apps. New templates and an incredible feature called Cover Pages. Try the new Squarespace at squarespace.com and enter the code MM at checkout to get 10% off. And by FreshBooks, the simple cloud accounting solution that helps millions of entrepreneurs and small business owners save time billing and get paid faster. Join over 5 million users running their business with ease. Try it free at freshbooks.com/MM. This is Marketing Mavericks, episode 35, recorded Thursday, December 18th, 2014, Game of Drones. Welcome to Marketing Mavericks, where we talk about everything at the intersection of marketing and technology. And today we're going to talk about something that's been one of the most popular products for 2014, and it's growing to be a pretty big industry. Our guests today are a startup, basically, that started producing and manufacturing their own drones, and they have become really successful, even including having a successful Kickstarter. We're going to talk about that and where they've evolved their business, including vertical markets. Our guests today are Eli, Delia. Did I say that right?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay. And Marque Cornblatt. All right.
Nice to be here.
And you guys are the founders of Game of Drones, right?
That's correct.
Yep.
Sounds cool to even say that. And our technical director, Anthony Nielsen.
How's it going?
Who's never ready for me. Kapow! There's Anthony. So this show I thought would be really great to talk about. We're kind of wrapping up at the end of the year, and one of the most popular products this year has been drones. There's a lot of controversy around it and stereotypes around it based on the military, but it's become a really popular novelty. Everybody seems to want one, myself included. And it's, you know, as marketers, how are we marketing it? How are we getting across the obstacles as manufacturers and producers of drones? How are you getting it out there? What's your niche? There's a lot of companies doing a lot of different things. And I want to talk about your success story and what you've done. And it's a great one, actually. You started with an idea, and you've turned it into a pretty smart business, competing against the big guys, right?
That's
Exactly.
True. We do try to go, well, we found ourselves going head to head with some of these larger companies that have definitely established market share in the emerging drone space. And while that wasn't initially our intention when we started playing around with drones and sort of developing in our garage these ideas we had, we found ourselves falling backwards over and over again into larger and larger opportunities to actually take this idea that we had and actually create a real viable brand with it.
So you guys actually started your business essentially in 2012, is that right?
Well, we started playing with drones in 2012. We were members of kind of this Friday night little organization we playfully called Fight Club, which was all about technology and how robust we could make the technology, robots in particular. Started off with kind of like how great can we make an RC car or truck, and through pure kind of nerdum testosterone, it got off the ground very quickly. And one thing led to another, and we were soon playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots in the air.
I love the 80s reference. That is 80s, right? Okay.
Childhood.
Childhood. And so you actually started thinking of an idea. Now this group that you started, that's on meetups.com, right?
Game of Drones is on Meetups, yes,
Okay.
correct. And anybody can go there and join it and learn about the community and join our monthly fight clubs now and meet a lot of very important people in the industry. It's quite a phenomenon and a really great event all in all. And it's fun for the whole family too. We have a lot of kids that come with their dads and parents and play, and everybody kind of they're always showing off their latest build, and then we put it to the test. We throw it in the arena and see if how it stands up, whether or not their tech and their build was good enough for the competition of the arena, as it were.
And we're going to talk about meetups, and we're going to talk about just in general how you've used no traditional marketing, only word of mouth marketing.
Correct.
And that has actually really pushed, besides the excitement and interest around drones. In fact, I'm quite distracted by the disco drone that's over on the table. I keep seeing it out of the corner of my eye. It's pretty cool.
That's the one for the top of the Christmas tree.
I know. You know what? That is exactly what I need. I have no topper for my Christmas tree right now. But you decided, you obviously started playing around with robots in the space, knock 'em, sock 'em, and then you decided to launch a Kickstarter campaign and a very successful one. You exceeded your goal. I think I was looking at that again this morning, and you doubled what your goal was. And let's talk about that. Why did you decide to reach out to your community via Kickstarter? And what was that experience like?
We actually put off doing a Kickstarter for at least a year or so while figuring out exactly what we were trying to do or how we might want to reach out to this growing community of followers. In that first year or so, we were working in a garage. We were building tools to build the airframes that we had in mind, but we were doing it for ourselves so that we would show up at this Friday night meetup and sort of have competitive drones to fly and fight with. We were producing videos and posting on YouTube and the web, showing what we were up to, and that's really what started the groundswell of support and built the community long before we did the Kickstarter. We actually kind of chose to do Kickstarter as a way of answering that sort of internet meme of shut up and take my money, because so many people were asking us, where can we buy this drone? Where can we get this drone? So we reluctantly did a Kickstarter, and we figured, okay, we'll raise enough money to distribute the drones to these people who seem to want them. Maybe we'll have some money left over. We can buy a 3D printer or a laser cutter and call it a day. And so we went into Kickstarter in early January with very modest goals in mind. But the Kickstarter was relatively successful. We met our goal and exceeded it within the first few days, and ultimately reached a few 100% over what we were looking to get. So by the time Kickstarter was over, we realized that we had a viable business model on our hands.
Right.
We also got a lot of really good press from Kickstarter because that was like the culmination of a lot of momentum. And so at the end of Kickstarter, we had a tremendous amount of public interest in what we were doing that far exceeded what we expected, and certainly blew out of the water the amount of attention we had going in.
And it certainly sounds like you were going to say something?
Oh, I was just we also noticed that during the meetups, they would grow in number substantially month to month, that they would just like balloon almost out of proportion to the point where we didn't have enough room for everybody to kind of fit. So
when we started this, we weren't thinking about community. We were thinking about building ourselves some toys, some drones.
Right.
But what we realized was the community became the kind of identifying infrastructure around all of our activities and everything that we were doing. We were trying to serve the community's request for hardware airframes. Then we started trying to serve the community's request for more and more of these meetups and these events. And what we started doing with these events, which became kind of like a marketing activity to promote the airframes, quickly became almost overshadowing the hardware because the events became so popular and so many people wanted the infrastructure for flying their own drones, learning about drone combat or drones in general. And so this huge groundswell of community support is what made us really start to focus on the community and create the league and the brand, which is now sort of like a sports brand, a sports league, not unlike the NFL or NASCAR. Right. Except it's with drones.
Right.
And we're actually watching some footage right now of, I think this was the Maker Faire.
Bay Area,
in the Bay Area. And I'd heard it was super, super crowded. I think Padre is the one that said it was really crowded.
Yes, it was.
And hard to get to you guys because of the popularity. And look at the massive crowds and people that are excited over these flying objects.
It's quite a phenomenon. I'm really I'm taken aback by just how popular it's become and just the infrastructure that has organically grown around us. We have some of the finest people in the community who are like straight up buddies now, and we just kind of came together first in fighting and now in racing, and it's also turning into aerial acrobatics. It constantly keeps evolving and changing and moving forward and getting bigger, and I feel privileged and honored to be kind of a real part of this. So
I want to go back to your Kickstarter because there's a lot of people that have been successful using Kickstarter, some are not. And you've obviously fallen on the side of real success, and it sounds like you attribute a lot of that to your already developed community around your product. What would you do differently, though? I mean, you're a success story, but yet I imagine that there are something that you would maybe have changed or have done differently in the Kickstarter process. What would that be?
Well, we were fortunate that we were slow to move on Kickstarter, so we really thought about it quite a bit before jumping in. And we watched a lot of the other hardware projects that came and went, a lot of whom raised their money and still failed because they were unable to deliver. We kind of overpromised on our deliveries. We kept our basic product simple, which was just the airframe, not a complete flying drone.
And is that this black model right here? Or
no,
Actually, it would be
most equivalent
there's
to
so many. Okay, this one.
This is the final product.
But that's a final drone populated with electronics and motors. What we were really focused on the Kickstarter was just the airframe, just the plastic body. And we weren't trying to deliver a lot of drones that were ready to fly with all the electronics in it. And I think we made the right choice for Kickstarter because even though it was only a year ago, even that recent ago, the technologies were a lot more primitive. And a lot of the motors and electronics weren't necessarily reliable. And so we avoided a lot of that tech support conundrum by not trying to accomplish that right off the bat. As we got through Kickstarter and moved forward, we slowly started to build ready-to-fly drones as well. But we also promised hand-painted propellers as a stretch goal. And because we started with the Fight Club idea, we were actually going to give away Fight Club bars of soap to everybody.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah.
And so even though we're trying desperately to build a company around drones, we spent days and days painting props and making soap in our kitchens. And the delivery, the fulfillment of Kickstarter was quite a lot more.
It was
than we
over the top,
expected.
quite over the top.
Which is, there's the soap.
Yeah.
And I think that's a learning experience that a lot of Kickstarters go through. And we certainly hit all those bumps in the road. And we were fortunate that we had a good team surrounding us, that we were able to deliver it all. And it took us a while. It took us longer than we expected. But, you know, being a month or two late on Kickstarter is still actually pretty much on time.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about this idea of a site and raising money on a site like Kickstarter. Before I do, though, I actually want to talk about a sponsor of Marketing Mavericks. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace.com. Squarespace recently launched the latest version of their platform, Squarespace 7, which has a completely redesigned interface that makes it even easier to create your own professional website or online portfolio. In fact, our guests today use Squarespace, and raising money is so important for any small business. Squarespace is consistently improving their platform. Squarespace 7 has just been introduced and makes getting started with your unique web presence easier. It has a completely redesigned interface now and simpler to navigate and operate in one seamless experience. Squarespace 7 allows you to live edit on one screen. No more toggling between Site Manager and Preview mode. You can even preview designs in device mode so you can see the site look like on tablets and mobile. In fact, Squarespace allows direct purchases. That's right, inside its platform with Getty Images at just $10 each for your site. You want professional pictures on your site? Well, use Getty through Squarespace. Now you can have branded email. Your email for your business is automatically set when you sign up for a Squarespace account. In fact, you know, we've talked a lot about on the show about musicians and artists and architects and chefs. Well, Squarespace has designed category-specific templates. So whatever that you're trying to do, they've already thought through a lot of the awkward pieces, and they're going to cater the site requirements for your industry groups. So, you know, if there's something specific that you do, you don't have to put a lot of thought into it. Squarespace has done that for you. And now you can customize your site exactly as you wish. If you're a developer, you will have access to the same platform that Squarespace uses for its own site for complete code control. And it's incredibly easy to use. If you want some help, Squarespace has live chat and email support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Plus, there are self-help articles. So if you don't really want to talk to somebody, they get that. They have articles and video workshops for you can browse at your leisure. It starts at just $8 a month and includes a free domain name if you sign up for a year. So, Start a free 2-week trial with no credit card required and start building your website. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use offer code MM to get 10% off and to show your support for Marketing Mavericks. And begin using Squarespace 7. For existing customers, you just have to go to the settings tab to activate all the new features. We thank Squarespace for their support of Marketing Mavericks. Squarespace, start here, go anywhere. Thank you, Squarespace. And it's exciting to hear that you guys use Squarespace and you really like it.
We love it.
I love
See?
it. Yeah. It's a toy box of opportunity in Squarespace. It's wonderful. Yeah.
That is great. And I love how they just make it easy for everybody. You've got enough to worry about trying to actually run your own business, much less trying to create a website or do a lot of other stuff. So they take the hassle out of that for you.
Do.
They really do.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of your success with Kickstarter, one of the things you keep talking about and attributing to is around this kind of concept, which we just talked to Jeremiah Aoyang, who's a friend of mine, and he does a lot of talking about this kind of sharing economy. And what you guys are doing is a part of this evolution of business. I mean, you've got brands and businesses out there like Boeing or Lockheed Martin, and they're obviously in the drone space. Boeing has been successful in Lockheed Martin, and you guys are competing against some pretty big guys. And
Here we come, guys.
I know, here they come with a network of people that support you. You're building your own community. Talk about that experience. Was that something that you expected? Was it something that it happened organically, or did you do something like you said, hey, we need to get the support of people? Like, how did that get started?
It was definitely organic. As we were doing our events and opening those events up to the public, we found that the people who were joining our community were an amazing brain trust, really smart, funny, driven people, some of whom were not in the industry, but many of whom were. They either worked for some of the larger companies or they were involved in their own drone startups. We would have expected in a situation like that in any other industry that all of those people would represent competition to us. But in this case, in the drone industry, that really wasn't the case. Now, granted, we're not necessarily having Lockheed Martin and Boeing show up at our Fight Club events, but some of the smaller companies and even some of the larger drone companies have some of their people representing when they show up. But essentially, we found that this growing drone industry and community was still at the early nascent stage where everybody was cooperative and friendly and working together, and people didn't immediately draw back into their corners like ready for a fight. Most people seem to be willing to share a lot of what they know. A lot of these companies are working with open source software to begin with, so there's a sharing mentality that is overarching this industry. There does seem to be a sense among all of us small players that when it comes to the larger players, the defense contractors and aerospace corporations, it does seem to be a little bit of an us versus them, that the concerns of the large corporations and their work in D.C. To sort of get legislation changed isn't necessarily on behalf of us small startups. It's really just kind of protecting their status quo. And so when it comes to us in the smaller side of things, we kind of rally together. We feel a lot of camaraderie that, in a sense, all of us small guys have to stick together.
We do, yes.
And that rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
And so we're kind of working with that philosophy.
Right. Yeah.
So at the beginning of this year, I think it was, FAA estimated that there would be 7,500 drones in the next 5 years, which to me actually sounds kind of low.
That is almost my entire collection. Yes, yeah.
What do you think? I mean, as someone who's entrenched in the space, I mean, what do you think that number is more realistic?
Are we talking in America or worldwide?
I would say, worldwide.
Okay. I think drones are basically, or UAVs as a whole, are the technology that's going to disrupt aeronautics as a whole, and that all aircraft are going that way. So are automobiles, for that matter. Robotics are pretty much here. They're going to really disrupt the way we do and know things, and they're only going to grow to probably be 100% of all all aircraft in the very near future.
So there was a recent survey that said that 63% of, now this is Americans, civilians, are uncomfortable with drones. So you have this diehard community, right? We want drones.
Right.
And then you have the average probably person who is still uncomfortable with drones. It's unknown. And I think a lot of that perception was started with the military and the initial use of drones. What do you, how has that been a challenge, if you will, to promote your product?
I think right off the bat, it's not really the word drone. It's the word predator in front of the word drone. That is the real problem.
Okay.
We are not building military machines at all. We are building from a fun standpoint and going up into what can best serve industry. Basically, an eye in the sky can really benefit just about every industry in the world, from search and rescue to firefighting and so forth.
Consider that 10 years ago, when smartphones started having cameras on them ubiquitously, there was a huge outcry for about a year or two when people were scared that, you know, they were being surreptitiously recorded in locker rooms or even just on the street, that their privacy was being invaded.
Correct.
We very quickly as a culture grew to understand both the social expectations of use of these technologies, as well as an understanding of how good or bad they can really be for surveillance. So essentially, we dealt with the problem as a culture and then sort of moved past it once we realized that while it still could be a technology that's used for nefarious purposes, generally speaking, it's not. With the drone industry, we're still in the very early stage of that, where there's still many people out there who don't really know what drones are. So they're being informed by the media, by this narrative that is not being put out there by the drone companies and representatives. It's being put out there by Fox News and other media organizations who have a vested interest in fear-based programming.
Keep
and
it
drones
sensational.
are the perfect poster child for fear-based programming and stories.
Well, and we're not picking on any one network. Certainly, I would say media could potentially. But you know, in fairness to media, I mean, there have been a lot of incidences, enough, I would say, that gets people scared. For example, I think it was a drone interfered with the jetliner in Florida. It was a U.S. Airway Express Air, I think, and it was flying at like 2,300 feet. And so it's that one rogue person who makes people scared, right? But you hear of other incidents. There's been in New York and other places around our country where you know, an incident like that gets reported and people get scared. So as
again, though, I think that's actually more about the media than it is about the actual incidents themselves.
Well, but as drone enthusiasts, if you will, and as entrepreneurs who are promoting a product, how do you educate your customers or educate the droning community about being safe so you can market your product better? I mean,
well, I think the key to that is twofold. One, a lot of what we do with Game of Drones, with the sports and combat, has a somewhat violent aspect to it, although it's very much controlled. It's in a net arena, and it's very much like a BattleBots or Robot Wars, but using drones. But a lot of people can see a negative connotation with that. There are some people who think we shouldn't be doing these activities at all because it gives bad ideas to the wrong sorts of people. If we promote a video that shows us, you know, putting a paintball gun on one of our drones, which we've done in a video.
Which actually, to me, just for the record, sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, it was
a lot of fun.
Eli, my partner's family owns a large paintball field here in Northern California, so there was a desire from all the paintball players when they saw us testing our drones. They immediately said, let's put 2 and 2 together and put the drones into the game, just like in the video games where you have drones providing air support. And so the paintball players want these toys to enhance their experience of the simulated paintball game. And
the players love
who are we to stop that idea? Because that's a fine idea. That's a very family-friendly and safe and sane way to use these technologies. And no one's really out there saying, well, we shouldn't be playing paintball because it simulates war and teaches war.
Right.
So when it comes to the drone games, we feel the same way. Rather than burying our heads in the sand as an industry and not addressing these edgier aspects of the conversation, we in fact steer right into that controversy so that we can participate in that conversation and even hopefully steer the conversation in a positive way.
Correct.
And when you look at what we do in the games, we're constantly reinforcing the safe flight, safe rules of flight, sane and reasonable behavior, wearing safety goggles if you're going to be up close in the arena. And so I think it's almost by providing this sort of safe environment for the violence, then you can understand that drones have severe limitations in what they can really do out in the real world. And also sort of break down some of that fear, sort of take the claws or the fangs out of drones, and you realize, oh, well, they're just computers, like cell phones are computers, and computers can be used for good or bad.
Correct.
And no one says, hey, don't use our Dell computer in robot wars, because that makes people think that a Dell computer is a tool of war. Like, no one thinks that about a laptop, but they are sort of thinking that about the toy drones that we're playing with in the arena. They're sort of equating that with a tool of war, when I'm saying, well, so is an automobile, and so is a laptop, and so is a cell phone.
You know, and this is based. Go ahead. Eli.
I would like to add that also, once you've been in the arena a few times, you become an ace pilot. You'll know all the basics of flight very quickly. You'll also know how to maneuver and how to get yourself out of problems very fast. So I think the arena actually makes really excellent pilots, and it's also extremely fun. So it has a certain amount of visceral addiction level that people just keep coming back, and every time they go through the games, they come out much better pilots, knowing much better safety rules on the other side. So,
and I want to talk about some of the vertical markets, because you certainly have you talked about the aggressive nature of the drones, which I kind of like personally, and I love. In fact, we're going to have you guys here for our New Year's Eve event, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah,
and so you'll be
be
watching Twit TV for New Year's. You're going to get to see these guys fight. We're going to talk more about that a little later. But I also want to talk about so there's this idea that you really haven't done any traditional marketing. You've used social media, if you will. Your in-face meetups that you use for meetups.com, and it's funny because I remember meetups.com when it was really popular, but it's still a
Before
really
it was
active and now it's still a very active way to organize meetings. A lot of people use Facebook groups to do that. Some people use LinkedIn groups, but you guys use meetups. How has that grown since your business started, and how much of that is actually leading to sales?
I think we started the meetups a little before we actually went to market. And they were a lot of fun, and it was really just the visceral fun that everybody started talking about, and that's how it kind of grew word of mouth right off the bat. As we put more videos online about our experiments and our builds, that also drew a lot of attention to the meetups, which we then built an entire website around, which then started to gain in popularity and actually broke down a few times because of it. So we had to re-engineer that whole face. But I would attribute a lot of our popularity to Mark's video stylings, and that he's already has a huge following from the other productions that he's done, and his videos have really gone viral in a lot of ways, and for good or for bad, it's brought everybody to us. I think we're at a point also where we're pretty much internationally known now. Our products are going all over the world, and that popularity is only kind of building. We just saw a fight club happen in Belgium the other day off of YouTube, and it looked quite exciting. And so that's really just kind of building the brand and building the league to the point where it's on such a viral level that we really don't have to put any finance into the marketing at this point.
The events were what we started with, but when we started producing the airframe, we said, oh, well, let's keep doing the events as a way to market the airframes. And while it certainly does that, we found that the events took on a life of their own. And in addition to being a hardware company, in a lot of ways, we're now a community-driven media company.
Right.
I have had a lot of previous experience on YouTube and some momentum there, so a lot of our traffic does get driven from videos and social media. But I've been really impressed, talking about Meetup, with the different quality of interaction that you get when it's a live in-person meetup. Just the fact that someone puts on their shoes and goes out into a live event on a rainy night or something like that means that person has a lot more drive.
Yeah.
And so while we may have thousands of followers across various social media and maybe just a few hundred at Meetup, those few hundred at Meetup represent such a higher quality of interaction that we have potential to have with that person, that most of our growing business has been people that have been culled from that community. People who've shown up, as I mentioned earlier, this amazing brain trust of people with really great experience, great engineering skills, marketing skills. And so as we've grown, we haven't reached outward to find these people, they basically presented themselves to us.
So are you using the meetup as a part of another vertical for your business? For example, there are a lot of organizations that as a vertical to their business, they have organized meetings or groups or events. Or are people just kind of just saying, it's going to be a meetup and you're really not associated with that? Or have you given thought to doing that, or are you doing that?
I think it's happening organically. I try to play in the games as much as possible. The last meetup in particular, I was pretty much taken away and listening to everybody's pitch for a project. And a lot of these projects like anti-poaching, just to name one of them, I found very, very interesting, and I think I'm able to bring it to the table for the group to kind of vote up or down, and on some of these projects we will be moving forward with. So I get like taken to the side a lot and just kind of like hearing people are bending my ear all night long about what they would like to do with our technology and our drones. And it's I'm having a great time just meeting these people and learning what they're going to use our gear for. So I think it's happening kind of organically. You know, we're popular enough, and we provide a window for the public to come and visit us and meet us one-on-one. And from that, I think we're able to kind of shape what we want to do in the future.
A lot of the markets that we're sort of moving into aren't necessarily ones that we went out and seeked out. It was like Eli said, people coming to us and saying, oh, that drone you use in your games is so tough. I've got a research project, or I'm in search and rescue, or I'm part of a small fire department. And we need a drone that is affordable, that can handle the rigors of acting like a real tool,
right.
Throwing in the back of a pickup truck with your shovels and your fire hoses and things.
Yeah.
And so the games, live event games, as well as being seen on the internet, really drove a lot of these drones for good projects that we're now involved in.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about some of those verticals, because there's two things I want to talk about. Some of your vertical markets that you're getting into. And then I also want to talk a little bit about, and you may not consider them your competitors, but other, maybe not the Lockheed Martins of the world or the Boeings of the world, but, you know, other companies that are trying to target a specific segment with their drones, and how you're determining what you want your business model to be, because I think you could start in one place, right? And then you get approached, as you have Eli, by people wanting to do things. And then how does that literally evolve your business? Because you have companies like Parrot, who, you know, I would say would probably be like really targeting, you know, maybe the toys, the individual person who, you know, wants to get a recreational drone. You've got DJI, who's really focused on photography, and some others. How are you approaching, before we talk literally about those vertical markets that you're going into, how are you approaching your brand and your brand identity?
In terms of the brand, we really have two major thrusts for what we do. One is, of course, this somewhat disruptive hardware design style that we have, and there's really no other hardware in the marketplace that's competing with what we're doing.
Correct.
Most of the other companies, even if they produce the hardware, like DJI, they sell hardware as well as the internals. But most of these companies are really sort of starting with a software play and then figuring out the hardware that needs to support that. That's a more traditional way of building a business in the last, say, 10 or 15 years.
Right.
In more recent years, as hardware in and of itself has gained a little traction, we weren't necessarily interested in starting a software company and trying to work with the code and the flight control boards that drive the drones, because that's what everyone else is doing. And frankly, we would have been sort of a Johnny-come-lately to that, even in this early stage of the industry. But what we did have, our special sauce, was this hardware design approach. So in terms of the brand, when it comes to our hardware, we plan on staying truly one or two steps ahead of everyone else. We're not just producing this one design that was essentially our Kickstarter design. This is what we led with, but we actually have several more products on the horizon coming out in mid-year. We're also looking to expand from just the wholesale component supply, which has really been the bread and butter of our hardware, to actually being more consumer-facing and providing the entire ready-to-fly drone with a real consumer-facing solution, because we found that no matter what drone, even if it's the very consumer-friendly DJI, it's still very difficult for the consumer to make that an easy part of their daily life, or if they're a photojournalist, to include that as part of their kit. And so we're looking to solve a lot of those consumer-facing problems with our next generation of releases.
Correct.
That makes me think too about just kind of some of the legal ramifications, because not only as consumers are we trying to figure out drones, and as startups and even the big guys are trying to figure out the droning space still, like the testing new drones.
Right.
But our governing authorities are trying to figure out how to manage it, and they probably know less than the guys like you that are in the trenches. How are you dealing with those potential obstacles, maybe the things that, I mean, are you preparing yourself? Do you have,
Yes.
I mean, is that included in some sort of insurance? I mean, how do you protect your business when these things could come up?
When we went into it with the Kickstarter, we were positioning ourselves, because we had an American manufacturer for our materials and were designed and built in America, that we really pushed the Made in America idea, assuming that we're Americans and we're selling to other Americans. In reality, what we found was at least half, if not maybe a little more than half of our sales, both wholesale and retail, are coming international from all over the globe. The FAA is sort of confusing the issue here in the States as to how drone companies can operate and how drone development should occur. And really their lack of understanding has really stymied U.S. development. But that doesn't stop us, because our clients are international. And while we would love to be able to be more U.S.-centric in our activities, if we get these clients from Belgium or South America or
Australia,
by all means, we're going to help serve their needs.
Correct.
Well, and you've got, in Japan, they're using drones in farming, which is really aggressive. And you guys have talked to a variety of people that are interested, and that's kind of where your vertical markets come in. I think actually, I've got here too, that thousands of miles of pipeline are being monitored by drones for environmental reasons, to help protect, but for potential leaks. So there's all kinds of really awesome, besides the fun.
I would like to say, though, that what we're really seeing here is the rise of robotics. And right now they fly because actually that's the least dangerous path for robotics to take, is in the air, so they don't hit obstacles. It's a lot easier to program for. And every field in the world, every industry is going to adopt robotics as a mainstay for basically inspecting all of their, from oil pipelines to reservoirs to land management with agriculture and whatnot. So it's really, this argument is more really about robotics and America's place in the robotics industry and global community. I think basically drones, for lack of a better word right now, are in the same place that computers were in the very early 90s. And there was a lot of government coming down trying to basically push back the laptop, or actually the desktop, but letting every consumer have a computer at the time was kind of like a mysterious place to play in. And the government really didn't know what to kind of make of it in those days. But as it happens, everybody has a laptop. Computers are now a 100% integral part of your daily life. Everything you do, an aspect of it goes online and is shared with the rest of the world. I think there's a lot of pushback coming from the government right now, based after those same early fears. But as more and more industries adopt robotics as a whole, and like the Google car comes online, Tesla has software to become a Google car as soon as it goes online. As soon as these things happen, I think it's going to mellow out, and there will be a bigger market in the coming years to play in for America. But in the meantime, the rest of the world is quite open to the possibilities of what robotics can do for them, and we're happy to play in those fields as well.
I guess you are happy to play in those fields with you?
In those blue skies.
In those
happy blue skies.
I want to talk about some of the vertical markets you've been presented with and some of the really awesome ways that drones are being used. But before I do, I want to thank another sponsor of Marketing Mavericks, which is FreshBooks. This episode is brought to you by FreshBooks, the cloud accounting software designed from the group ground up for entrepreneurs and small businesses. To get a fresh start in 2015 with FreshBooks, it's the easiest way to invoice clients, organize expenses, and track your time. Are you still using Word or Excel or Google Docs to make invoices? FreshBooks, you can create a professional-looking invoice in minutes. It's super easy. FreshBooks is built for growing businesses. On average, FreshBooks customers double their revenue in the first 24 months and get paid an average of 5 days faster. Who doesn't want to get paid faster? I know I do. With FreshBooks award-winning mobile apps, you can do it all from anywhere on your Android or iOS devices. Avoid those awkward emails and phone calls. I've had to make them. It's no fun. To your late-paying clients, automated late payment reminders help you to get paid faster and stay worry-free. Focus on your products. Do you keep your receipts in a shoebox? Well, snap photos of receipts right from your phone to instantly capture expenses. Be organized. It's going to help your business. Billing clients for your time has never been easier. Just open FreshBooks app on your phone, start the timer, and go. If you ever need help, you'll talk to a real person every time. FreshBooks award-winning support is ready, and support is free forever. Try FreshBooks free for 30 days with no obligation. Go to freshbooks.com/mm and enter Marketing Mavericks in the How Did You Hear About Us section when signing up. Start your 30-day free trial today. Go to freshbooks.com/mm and don't forget to enter Marketing Mavericks in the How Did You Hear About Us section. We want to thank FreshBooks for their support of this episode of Marketing Mavericks. And so for all those entrepreneurs out there trying to stay organized, you know what? FreshBooks is going to help you do that so you can focus on making your product. And in this case, drones, which, again, we've got Eli and Mark joining us talking about their going from an idea into a really successful business that is being a part of the sharing economy and getting a crowd basically to support what you're doing. And not only are you making these really cool, indestructible drones, but you also have some vertical markets now that you're experimenting with that have come from this kind of social media meetup, non-traditional marketing. People are coming to you with new ideas. One of them that really was interesting to me was this idea that you're building a drone. You've been approached to build drones to go into wildfires, to help firefighters. I don't know if you the one knew this, but I actually survived a wildfire myself. So I've been a part intimately with that space in Colorado, and it's pretty scary. And in fact, in my case, the winds changed dramatically. They didn't know what was happening. They didn't have maybe some of the technology that you're offering and that could be used in the future to predict. And it took out literally 350 homes in a matter of hours because we didn't have the knowledge that drones are going to be able to provide us. How does that work? How does the drone not melt, first off?
Well, you actually hit the nail right on the head when you mention knowledge. And really, when it comes to fighting forest fires or mapping areas of poverty in the favelas or whatever the project may be, what drones really offer is a way to get that knowledge and that data to the researcher or to the firefighter. In the case of fires, even during a forest fire, airplanes are pretty much grounded once it gets dark. So from dusk till dawn, there's a lot of changes in a fire that the firefighters on the ground aren't always aware of, and it takes time to get satellite imagery updated. And they're not flying airplanes at that time. So with a relatively small shift in legislation and the adoption of these technologies, you could have drones circling over the fires all night long, providing real-time updates, so that when the firefighters start moving again in the morning, they're not going to be potentially going into a trap, or they know exactly what they're facing.
Right.
So that right off the bat is the simplest way that a drone could benefit in that situation.
Correct.
But in addition to fires, we're also seeing some of our users utilizing drones for managing their farms, basically herding cattle, or mapping the quality of
I just got
crops.
an awesome visual of of something like a ranch in Colorado or Texas or Montana where the drone is actually herding the cattle.
Yeah.
How awesome and in
more
the
fun
future
than
is
work.
that?
That's exactly what's happening. It's in Australia at the moment, and we're hoping to get a video from the Australian ranchers of showing the drones in action. But what we found is we got so many requests for all these different ways that the drone can solve these problems. And they're coming to us because they see we have a robust product, that we actually got really good at saying no, because there's no way we could take on all of these projects. But we wanted to create a kind of a space for developers within our company so that we could take on some of these projects and really pursue some of these interesting and novel problem-solving projects.
It's almost like you have your own incubator, if you will, for for drone startups. Would that be accurate?
That may be overstating it, but that is kind of the nature. It's more like individual case uses for the end users, and we kind of represent a environment in which they can hopefully get those problems solved. And so we're actually developing a way to become a consultancy as well, mostly so we can afford to spend all this time talking to all these potential clients about all these projects.
Right.
Or people like me who are telling your story for you.
Well, we won't charge you for that.
Oh,
a drone of
that's
this
good.
size in a fire is best served with a weather collection data system on it, that it can go and land in a place, so it can pick up wind direction and relay that information back down to the ground station, so it can be relayed to the firefighters. How the fire is changing dynamically moment to moment. And then if a firefighter were to get into trouble, that weather station can then lift off and go and find them a path out, and then relay that path back out to the firefighter. So that's kind of a use case that we're kind of playing with right now.
And saving lives, not just saving homes, but certainly saving the firefighters as well.
And once we start saving, once the lives start getting saved with this technology, the attitudes will ultimately totally flip. And it'll be nothing but a good thing for us.
I think so too. I think, as we educate the average consumer more about that, the way that drones are being used, I think the perception will certainly change. So let's go back to, the drone manufacturers who are trying to find a market. You've mentioned several times, and just recently in the last couple of minutes, that you can't do all of these things.
Right.
You're two guys, and you've got some great opportunities. How, again, do you stay focused on your core brand? Because some of these things sound pretty interesting. I know, Eli, you shared with me one opportunity was being used for poaching, to crowdsource a community around finding poachers.
It's these people come to us with their projects, and so they kind of have an infrastructure that they just need the gear for. So we look at it and we see how we can best serve them, and we also see that being able to provide our products into their problems actually serves us too. So it's kind of a mutual beneficial way to get our brand out there, as well as our products used in the field. And then those guys report back. We ask that everybody that we help post their use cases to our websites, our various social medias outlets, and basically it helps serve all of us.
One of the interesting things that happened is when we were really early in our days starting out, we were approached by a couple of military contractors. And we weren't really interested in going that direction, but we sat down and spoke with them. And we got a really interesting sense of what the military is looking for now from small drone manufacturers in terms of what they want that tool to be. So we ended up walking away and not really being too interested in the military contract. But what that did do was inform us of some of these desired capabilities in the drone. And then as we started talking to civilian and industry users, they were looking for exactly those same capabilities. And so drones, being such a fast-moving new industry that really has only existed for a couple of years, it's almost like that traditional military trickle-down of technology doesn't have to happen anymore.
Correct.
The small company can sort of interact directly with the civilian user and come up with some of those same answers that would have traditionally taken that military trickle-down procedure to trickle down to the consumer user.
So one of the things I do know about, I'm thinking about like herding cattle and animals specifically, because you talked about poaching, and it is that, and this is more about the technology of the drone and the different uses for the drone and how the drone needs to be different. I'm kind of involved in the hot air balloon community, and one of which this would be the actual predator of the hot air balloon, probably would rip the nylon. But that said, one of the things that I learned is that you want to be really careful about being too close to them and how they can hear the flame, lighting, and it can spook them. I would imagine that you would also have to make drones that have either very quiet or don't come down of them overhead. I mean, so how are you consulting people about that kind of minutia, that kind of very specific detail about how to make sure that their drone is going to work?
Proper drone operation and behavior?
Right.
Well, fortunately, there are pre-existing sort of rules in place by the AMA, which is a 50-year-old organization for model flyers. And their basic rules have been in place for at least that long or so. And they make a lot of sense, common sense rules. You stay under a 400-foot ceiling of flying. You keep the drone in line of sight, which that is one rule that may be changing a little bit with the popularity of using video for flying drones. But generally speaking, you fly in a controlled manner. You never fly over crowds or in places where it's prohibited. There's a distance from an airport that's very clearly delineated that you aren't supposed to cross over. So the rules for proper drone behavior are already kind of in place, even if people might need a refresher course, that this new technology sort of doesn't like change the rules of, don't behave foolishly and irresponsibly. But a lot of those rules are already in place. Even though we do some things that seem to be in contrast to those rules, we actually couch all of our activities very heavily in safety procedures. When we fly our combat games, because that can be somewhat chaotic and violent, we have a protected cage, a net arena, so the audience is always on the other side of that net from the violence. Ironically, as the FAA seems to be coming down harder and harder and making civilian drone and hobby drone use more and more of a challenge, the Game of Drones combat arena actually ends up being one of the few places that's essentially off limits to the FAA, because we're not flying in open airspace. Most of the time, we're not even outside. We're in big warehouses.
Right.
And so we're actually finding that we're creating a kind of safe place to explore drones, build drones, crash them up, and not feel like you're doing something wrong, not feel like you're putting the hobby in a bad light. And so by creating this sort of smash-up derby safe environment, we're actually, I think, driving the notion of educating people on drone safety forward.
And I love that, actually. And I think especially this year with the holiday season, people are probably buying drones for their kids, and parents are like, what do I need to know? Or maybe dad's buying a drone for dad, or mom, in my case. How are you getting that? Where should people go to get some of that education? Like how long can I fly? Where can I fly?
Right.
What technology do I need for this type of flying? Like
YouTube is a phenomenal resource. All of your questions can be addressed pretty much on YouTube with some, with a little bit of going down the drone rabbit hole, as it were. You could learn all about building. I know the show right before us.
I know. Padre's a great resource.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. So following shows like that will teach you how to build them and get involved. For like how long do they fly and whatnot, that's kind of battery to weight ratios.
There's so many questions about the particulars of, it's almost like how do you learn about cars? Well, you have to kind of get into a little bit of car culture, talk to people who fly cars, drive cars, or work on cars. So it's the same idea. In addition to the internet, which is a fantastic resource for technical questions and things like that, the meetups are even better. Ours or one of the many other drone-oriented meetups that are occurring, because you're interacting with other drone flyers, you're sharing technology, you're trading bits and parts, and you'll learn more in one meetup, 1 2 or 3 hour meetup, than you'll learn in hours and hours researching online.
Right.
I need to attend the meetup. So I want to talk quickly about your actual events that we saw at the Maker Faire and what we're going to have here at TWIT TV for our New Year's Eve event. How can someone participate in the Game of Drones competition? If they're hardcore.
It's really easy. Join our community. Join the Game of Drones meetup page. Certainly follow us on Facebook and things like that, and that way you'll kind of start learning about drones if you're not already a flyer. If you're already a flyer and you want to build something, there's all those resources. But just by showing up to the meetups, looking at some of our videos, at some of the ways in which the games go, you'll quickly either sink or swim. A lot of people show up and they don't really fly at all. They're just there to observe what we're doing. But we really encourage people to bring their drones. And like Fight Club, if you show up, if it flies, it fights.
Correct.
And you're probably going to end up breaking your drone and then learning about how to make them a little stronger, how to make them a little more resilient. And at that point, you're part of the community, and you are then a combat pilot.
Correct.
A combat pilot. I totally want that on my resume.
Sports combat, by the way, please.
Well, I'm pretty fascinated by all the drones sitting here. It's been hard to want to talk and not play with them. I love what you guys have done. Congratulations on not only just your successful Kickstarter, but where you've really taken your business. I think you're a great example for entrepreneurs really using the sharing community, the sharing economy to grow a business that's clearly grown a lot in just 1 year. And I guess the final question would be, what's next? What are you guys planning next?
More, bigger, louder.
More, bigger, louder. Okay.
Actually, it's really just driving this brand further. We have a lot more hardware that we plan on producing, but even more than that, we really are interested in the community and building a larger and larger community, and not just a community for tech support and technical questions, but a community of drone flyers who have a passion for it and really want to see the uses of drones grow, the social acceptance of drones grow, and the idea that drones are a part of our culture. So let's start a community that just gets right into that.
Right. I think a big part of our secret sauce, as it were, is that we're really not in competition with the other drone manufacturers because, again, they're software based. We actually provide something that is very collaborative to their needs. They would go out there, and often, you know, every drone that you put in the sky has the potential of crashing. And I've gone to our friends, especially over at, if I can name names, Drone Deploy. I've seen their drone graveyard, as it were, of broken drones. And our drones, when they follow the sky, you flip them over, you maybe change the rotor, you put them right back in the sky. So I think we're very, we are basically something that I think every drone company kind of needs for us to kind of help them out and stay in the sky, as it were. That is the best way to put it.
And if somebody wants to, I don't know, purchase one of your pieces of hardware, maybe they want to play with Game of Drones, or maybe they just like what you guys are doing and are interested, or maybe they have questions for you. What's the best way they can follow you, Mark?
Well, there's gameofdrones.biz. We also have a Ning site, gameofdrones.ning.com, and our
at Game of Drones CA.
Yeah, on Twitter at Game of Drones CA. So we're certainly represented on social media, and we're very much available. If you reach out on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or any of these things, somebody, us or one of the people in our company, is usually right there to interact with you and help you solve your technical issue, or maybe advise you on the components that you need, or just help you get up and fighting and racing.
Getting up, fighting, and racing.
Rotors up.
Yes.
Rotors up. Well, I want to thank you guys for both coming on Marketing Mavericks and sharing your story, which is a great one. I'm looking forward to seeing you on New Year's Eve. And successful flight. Fight, what is it? Fight Club? What?
Flight Club?
Yeah. Game of Drones, everybody.
If it flies, it fights.
That's right. So that concludes this episode of Marketing Mavericks. Now, if you want to follow me, you can do that by going to lots of places. In fact, all over social media. You can find me on Facebook, Google+, or you can go to @TonyaHallRadio on Twitter. And I love reading your emails. Thank you so much for your interest in the show and for giving me ideas on what you want to see next. You can, and if you haven't emailed me or you'd like to, you can go to email. Your email address is mavericks@twit.tv. I'd love to hear from you, everybody. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.